Good evening. Well, this is a surprise, isn't it? It's kind of a surprise to me. Just going through my little notes here. You know, it's Saturday, campground, very busy, but I felt since I had the inclination for a visit with you, I'm hoping you would want to have a few minutes for a visit with me. Because as you know, as the season goes on, there will be less time as I get busier and busier. I'm thinking about doing summer reruns. That's back in the day when the one season, you know, the regular season of television programs would end, we would get to watch the reruns. We didn't have DVRs and stuff like that, so you could tape it and watch it back again later. And you'll notice I got my sweatshirt on again. It is still cold. Got a backup sweatshirt here. I'm just going to get that out of the way because it bugs me. Yeah, so, and I have a sweatshirt under here. It's a little chilly. And if it were a normal night, if it were a little warmer out, I would be out on the grounds telling stories. But here I am. And if this is your first time viewing, I am Reverend Alicia Leslie from Spirit of Unity Cyber Ministry. I like to call my ministry unlimited because it's out there in cyberspace for whoever might come upon it and like it. Coming upon something is very important, which you'll learn in just a couple minutes. But if you like what you see, you can like it. You can go to YouTube where I'm going to upload it later. You can subscribe so you never miss anything. And you can go back to my previous videos and see all the amazing and wonderful topics we covered. I call myself a mundane mystic because what I like to do is take everyday topics, parts of everyday life, and look at the deeper or metaphysical or spiritual, hence mundane, everyday, mystic, spiritual, to see how it can help us all lead a better life. And today, I am talking about lessons learned from the Titanic. You might remember a few days ago, it was actually April 15th. A lot of people were thinking about their taxes, but it was the 110th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. Now, you might be thinking, that's tough. It was a tragedy, but what does it have to do with me? So today, I'd like to give you some thoughts about what it might mean to you and to me. Because you see, with metaphysics, behind absolutely everything in the seen world, in the manifest realm, there is a spiritual cause behind it. A lesson, too, I might say. All right, so, and I cannot tell you that this is going to be done in the usual 30 minutes because, I don't know, it just took me on a ride once I started to think about it. You remember we talked about it, you know, like 4 or 5 days ago, just generally on the Remembrance Day. And we learned that 1,500 passengers and probably as much crew died on that day that the Titanic sank. And we begin with lesson 1, and that there was a common belief that the Titanic was unsinkable. Nothing could sink this ship. It was strong, it was powerful, and nothing could sink it. Well, lesson 1 is never be so sure of yourself that you take unnecessary risks and shortcuts cuts. You see, they were so sure that that ship was unsinkable that they didn't provide enough lifeboats for everybody. And there's a worse part, that many of those lifeboats were sent off without even being full. They were so panicked, get away, because they knew when that ship sank, it would like pull down anything around it, so they didn't want to be anywhere near it. There were people on the ship. They said women and children first. Some men ran, well, one man in particular ran, got into some women's clothes and got on that lifeboat. I don't know how much I could blame him, because we have a very strong survival instinct. But the important thing to learn is all the reasons why there were not enough lifeboats on that ship. And I'd like to also point out that it took 2.5 hours for the Titanic to sink. 2.5 hours. Plenty of time if there were enough lifeboats to get everybody saved. Crew, everybody. The Titanic was a luxury liner. Now, after, for whatever reason, probably because it was the 110th anniversary, on YouTube, which I frequently watch for its relatively brief but very interesting videos, I had started watching a couple of Titanic videos. They were basically about the menus and what the people ate and how they made it. And they talked about the different classes and how much each class ate. And with the Titanic, the thing was, the luxury was for everybody. Even the people in the third class, which were the people down at the bottom, twice as many third class passengers died as anybody else. I guess if there's a shred of good news to it, the 2 weeks before they went, they had very good food, they had a lounge, they had all kinds of activities and stuff. So as horrible as the whole thing is. And another thing you might know, try to wrap your mind around this. Again, Titanic was a luxury liner. The people in third class paid as little as $20 for the crossing. I don't know how you could, equate that to today. I didn't take the time to figure it out. But, and so many people were going one way to start a new life. And why did they lose those lives? A piece of it was arrogance. The arrogance of saying, this ship is unsinkable. We don't need any lifeboats. Why does that matter to you? Has there ever been a time in your life where you were so sure that you were right, that you couldn't lose, that you found out you'd actually made a big mistake? Interesting story about the lookout for the Titanic. He went up into the crow's nest, and that's where it's way up top of the ship, and it's a little area where they would go up there and they would stand there and be the lookout for any danger, any ships, any icebergs. Now, on the day that the lookout went up into that crow's nest, somebody had, well, human error, whatever, his binoculars weren't there. some people believe that if he had his binoculars, he would have been able to see better and to have spotted the iceberg earlier. Now, as soon as he spotted it, it did call out. He did call out, iceberg. And they turned the ship the best they could, you know, and they heard it scrape against the iceberg. What they didn't know, again, overconfidence, they didn't even check, but there was a huge slit cut in the ship where the water started coming in. Somehow that man, that the lookout, did survive, but he blamed himself for it for his entire life. Said it was his fault. Okay, again, how does this apply to us? In our own lives, when we get arrogant, and it's not that that guy was arrogant, but he did trust himself more than himself and his binoculars. Now, I would be pretty sure to say there was another pair of binoculars on that ship. So we have to remember, arrogance and ignorance can be very dangerous. As I was started to get involved in Titania, might I say, in this week that started with the anniversary of the sinking. Like I say, it started with watching a few videos about the food, and my interest grew and grew due to a thing called algorithms. Now, some people hate algorithms because what that's saying is, if you look something up on the internet, especially on your phone or computer, and even your TV, you're going to be inundated. Because I watched a cooking video on YouTube, a Titanic cooking video or Titanic anything video, suddenly videos were appearing for anything Titanic. And I will say I became quite fascinated with them. And when I got home from work today, I turned on YouTube, and there was a video of the Titanic yesterday and today, or then and now. And they would show pictures of the Titanic when it was ready to go, and pictures of it in today's times with all the build up and the barnacles and all the horrible stuff that is there down at the bottom. And they'd show the pictures side by side. This was this particular passageway. This was the passageway when it was new. They used some pictures, I'm sure, from the movie, and they used many pictures from the promotional materials for when they sold tickets to this unsinkable ship. And I was so fascinated, and I thought about our own lives, and I thought about, again, the pictures we have in our mind, the way we want things to be, and what can happen if we don't proceed with caution and they crash and sink. A wonderful lesson from the Titanic is that life can turn on a dime. Or, as the Apostle Paul would say, in the twinkling of an eye. And that's what happened to the people on the Titanic. But as I looked at these videos, one of the things that really, really impacted me was the attention to detail, the craftsmanship, the beauty, the magnificence, the luxury. But all that luxury and all that magnificence didn't save anyone. the important parts, both the structure and the precautionary measures, were missing. And it was so sad to see all of that luxury at the bottom of the ocean, covered in coral and barnacles and whatever happens there below the sea. Here's a fun fact, as you would say. They brought up a piece of the Titanic. Now, this was not like some people say, oh my God, they're disturbing the resting place of this magnificent treasure. But what they brought up was a piece that we envisioned that the Titanic went crack down. But what happened is there were other pieces that broke off of it, and this was a 2-deck piece called Fragment, and it didn't look very big if you look at the picture. This fragment of the Titanic had broken away, and so over time, in 1998, they were able to bring it to the surface, to treat it against oxidation, and there are pieces in 2 different museums now. They were naturally separated. They didn't cut them apart. One is in, I think, Las Vegas, Nevada, and the other one, I'm not sure. I think it's in Washington, but I can't remember because I was so fascinated with the whole video. That fragment weighed 20 tons. I believe, if my knowledge of weights and measures serves me, that would be 40,000 pounds in a fragment. That should give you an idea of the size and perceived strength of the Titanic. So, if we have a project, a dream, a desire, a way of being, we may see on the surface, no problem. But if we don't consider the possibility that we're missing something, we are making a huge mistake. Now, in Unity, which is my spiritual path, it is my family. It's the way I live and move and have my being, as it were. There are some people who are called absolutists, and they say, no, 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 just hold the positive thought. Hold the positive thought, and it will be fine. I don't know. Is it possible a bunch of people on that ship could have held a positive thought and it wouldn't have sunk? I suppose there's a spiritual possibility, but it's more like this. Number one, we don't all hold the same positive thought, right? Number two, we need a plan B. To need a plan B doesn't mean you don't trust God completely to take care of everything in your life. It means you are humble enough and accepting the possibility that God might be greater than us, that we might want to have plan B. A lot of people wouldn't get vaccinated. Oh, no, no, I don't need that. I am spiritually aligned. God is my source. God is my health, and I'm not going to get it. Well, I have some very spiritual, wonderful, blessed, strong Unity friends who died from COVID. It was pre-vaccination, so let's not think that they were being arrogant about not getting a vaccination. Could it be that plan B of God is that we were given not only a divine mind, our mind is our connecting link with God. It is through our mind we receive and perceive divine ideas that bring us all possibilities, okay? With this mind, we operate a physical part of our thought process, which is our brain. And our brain can do wonderful deciphering and putting things together and taking signals and doing the math for us, doing the physical expression of the spiritual experience. And maybe that's where vaccines came from. Let's think about that Titanic a minute. Did they practice common sense? Did they practice critical thinking? Could it be that common sense and critical thinking could have saved all those lives that were lost? Could it be that common sense and critical thinking can bring us through the tragedies of the earth ship that we abide on, the potential dangers, critical thinking, common sense? We don't want to run our lives by ego. We want to run them by spirit. And if we think of the people who were so arrogant they did not think of we don't need those extra lifeboats. Was it they were overconfident, or were they too doggone cheap to add the extra lifeboats at the extra expense? What they did then and what happened then is the greatest tool for us to learn from in our own lives. Another one of the beautiful videos that I started watching, but it was too long to keep watching, was a beautiful computer-generated tour of the Titanic. It was using all of the measurements and information from the Titanic, and they put it into like a 360 visual tour. Try to find that on the internet. It's great. History Channel has a lot of great information on it. Now, some of the people that worked on the Titanic were doing their art, and their skills and their science and whatever their works were, their professions. They did the best they could, and it was beautiful. And others, absolutely not. They were interested in the shortcuts, getting the job done, getting the paycheck, and others were just interested in getting praise for being on the unsinkable. So we had ego at work, we had greed at work. There is human error. Why is there human error? Because we're human. Just saying. Most of us are not there yet. I am twice vaccinated and twice boosted. Not because I don't trust God not to take care of me, but I trust that God has given us the tools we need to avoid the negative implications of COVID, right? I want to be around for a long time. I got stuff to do. I got thoughts to share. I do have little notes here. Okay, so one of the things I talked about in one of the videos was the changes they have made in the cruise ship, in all maritime vehicles and things, about how they made them safer. They made them with different kind of locks and all this. It's stuff that's beyond my ability to explain. But all the things they did to make ships safer so we can feel more comfortable getting on a ship. But I will tell you why I don't cruise today. First of all, I love cruising. Cruising is such fun. It's such fun because you eat like a pig. You never bring tight clothes onto a cruise. You bring stretchy stuff because you're going to eat. You eat breakfast. You eat snacks in the afternoon. You eat lunch. You eat afternoon tea. You eat dinner. And then you have a midnight buffet. Now, isn't that just a dream? And it's wonderful, and you have entertainment and games, and the crew is fun, and everything's wonderful. And at this time, although our cruise lines may be safer, aside from COVID germs, I might say, but also because they are an ecological nightmare. The things they are doing to our ecology, to our climate change and everything are really awful. If they find another way, I'll be hopping myself on a cruise ship another day. Do you know what the most ecologically conscious ships are for cruise ships? Disney. And I think that's lovely, but I don't see myself going on a Disney cruise. That's basically because I like children, but I don't want to go on a cruise with them. Not even my own. Never did. Never would. Not because I'm being selfish, but one of the reasons is I was born, I'm a well-trained worrywart. My mother trained me in those arts early on. I couldn't bear the thought of being on a ship with my kids. And I just don't care to be around a bunch of screaming children on vacation. Just saying. So that's why I don't cruise today. So I looked up some of the lessons, the spiritual lessons that we can learn, stuff that was out there on the internet. And one of the things that we learn, a lesson we learn from the Titanic, is that when disaster strikes, everyone is in the same boat. It does not matter whether you're rich or poor or whatever, we're all in this together. The same thing is true on planet Earth. We are all in this together. To participate in war, and I know sometimes for self-preservation you got to protect yourself. But we have to learn. We have to learn how to overcome that. Remember, the Bible told us to beat our weapons into plowshares. What are plowshares, you say? They are the things that you dig up the ground, that you can plant crops, that can feed us, that can keep our planet healthy and strong and providing for us. Remember the other day we talked about, are we a symbiote or are we a parasite? Beating our weapons into plowshares means that we stop fighting and dividing and we start to feed each other. Another one is that our values change in dire circumstances. Some people for the better, some not so much. The gentleman that dressed himself in women's clothing to get off the boat because they were taking women and children first. I don't know what his values were before he got into that ship, that lifeboat. And I am not so arrogant as to say, I know I would have been a hero and put the other people first. I'd like to think of that, but I can't say that because I'm not in that position. Another thing we learn from the Titanic is that life can change in a second. 4 years ago, just short of a couple months of 4 years ago, oh gosh, it's 5 already. One afternoon, I was sitting in the office, having a good day, taking care of business, and I got a phone call. And I found out that my beloved and precious Sammy, my 27-year-old granddaughter, had died. It wasn't too long after that, my beloved grandson, great-grandson, was moved to Florida. So in a matter of a couple of months, well, it was in a flash and in an instant that Sammy passed away. And then a month later, when I realized that I was not going to be Tristan's primary caregiver, as I had been told by his father. So life does change on a dime, but what we do with it from that dime moment is critical. And what we do is we learn and we make the best of it. I am very blessed and fortunate that Tristan's paternal grandparents like me and accept me and let me share all kinds of time with Tristan that I can on video visits, and they open their home to me and receive me. And the December after Sammy, I guess it was a year Christmas after Sammy passed away, we adopted each other, so spiritually. And so even though something horrible can happen, it doesn't mean your life is over. Another thing is, where do we put our trust? It's another lesson we learn. When you get on a ship, you have put your trust physically in this realm on the people that made the ship, on the people that captain the ship, that direct the ship, that work on it, that fuel it, that do all their stuff. We have to trust them to know what they're doing. In our lives, they are so expensive and go into so many areas. The most important thing we can trust is God. It is spirit. It is divine principle. If we look around, we look around at the manifest realm and we see all the amazing things that God has done and how they all work together. Back to scripture again. All things work together for good to those who love the Lord. Now, if we take the Lord, metaphysically interpret it as law, as spiritual principle, that is something you can count on. It works every time. And the only difference in the way it's working and the way we're seeing it working is a matter of our own consciousness. This is why learning to be spiritually grounded is very important, because we can trust spiritual principle. Another one of the lessons they listed from the Titanic is man's boasting is in vain. Sometimes when we think we're about the smartest thing since sliced bread, the universe is more than happy to tell us, no, not so. Did you ever have one of those days where you're all dressed up, you felt cool, you thought you were gorgeous in your fancy clothes, or you did some wonderful thing, and then somebody tells you you have broccoli between your teeth, or that your zipper's down, or something like that? That's a real wake-up call to our ego. Don't boast. Don't think you're better than anybody else. Be grateful for everything you are, and do your best to come even higher than that. I want to talk a little bit about the Titanic. Not the Titanic, excuse me, backing up. About Noah's Ark. What is the difference between Noah's Ark and the Titanic? The Titanic was designed through human thought, planning, engineering, construction. Noah listened purely to spirit. He was listening to God, God was saying, you got to do this thing. What did he put on? He gave them all the dimensions. What did he put on the ship, on the ark? 2 of each creature, male and female. Why? Because they multiply. Why is this important metaphysically? Because we manifest through not only our thoughts, but our feelings. We need both thought and feeling in order to manifest. Easiest example in the world, I'll give you today. No, that's a different day. Another lesson, another day. Let's use the old chocolate cake, okay? Somehow you get this idea about a chocolate cake. Now, it could come from a TV commercial, and that seed is planted in your head that says chocolate cake. Now, if you did not have any attachment, if you did not have any desire for that chocolate cake, if there was no emotional thing going on, that thought would go commercial and you'd be on to the show. That seed thought of the chocolate cake took root in your mind and was fertilized by your desire, by your feeling, by your emotion. Between the thought of the cake and the emotion of wanting it, you're going to have a chocolate cake. Whether you make it, bake it, or go out and buy it, you're going to have a chocolate cake. And that's the way principle works. We get a divine idea, but thought alone is not important. It's the feeling as well as the thought that makes it happen. And that is why the metaphysics, the principles behind Noah's Ark mean you got to have both in order to make it work. Okay, another thing, I'm trying to hurry, but you know what? Some things you just shouldn't hurry because they're meant to be examined and tasted and experienced and rolled around. The third class, the ones that paid the $20 for a passage, for a whole passage from England to the United States, $20, good food, they were the highest at risk, and most of them died. Another point, they received the report. They called out iceberg, but they didn't really get the impact of it. They had too much confidence in the fact that the ship was unsinkable and thought it was only scratched. If your plans don't feel like they're working out right, stop, think, and explore, and see if there's something more to this than a bump in the night. After the Titanic sank, there were 5 boards of inquiry. Does it sound kind of like something we got going on here? There were lots of conspiracy theories. Sound like something going on here? But beside the conspiracies and the inquiries, there was truth, and coming to the understanding of why it sank. Last thing I'd like to kind of talk about is the passengers had a chance. Women and children first. Sorry about that, guys. But a lot of men did make it, just saying. But the passengers had a good chance of getting off the ship. They had enough lifeboats. The crew, not so much. In our lives, we can be passengers or we can be crew. The crew took the greatest risk. And many of them stayed. They were committed. Now, there was one that survived that came to fame, and her name was Molly Brown. She didn't have her husband, didn't. I don't remember if her husband wasn't on the ship or didn't make it. Or she was a widow already. I can't remember right this minute as I was taking in so much information. But Molly Brown assisted in getting the people onto the lifeboats. And once they were on the lifeboats, she was critical in keeping them strong and keeping their faith until those in the lifeboats got saved. And she is known as the unsinkable Molly Brown. And if you did not know that before this moment, I urge you to go onto Google and Google Unsinkable Molly Brown. Because especially in these days where we are facing enormous challenges, it is important that each one of us be Molly Brown. That each one of us hold the truth that we can make it. If we stay strong, we stay positive, and we attach, we connect, we apply the principles that it's all based on. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it, or learned from it, or were encouraged to look a little deeper. And I'm not sure when I'm going to be doing another video, hopefully during the week, because, we're still getting used to doing campground. So anyway, I want to tell you that I love you, I bless you, I thank you for being with me tonight, and God bless you. Good. Bye-bye.